Welcome to Silicon Slopes Live. I'm here with Dr. Rachel Hess from the University of Utah. She is running clinical trials to test whether the malaria drug hydroxychloroquine can prevent the spread of COVID-19. Hey, Dr. Hess, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Clint. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for joining us. This is an interesting topic and something that obviously has, got a lot of national attention because our President Trump, has talked about this drug a decent amount. The clinical trial that you're leading was launched quickly. What went into putting it together so fast?
I just have to say, this is the fastest startup we've ever done for anything in my 20 years of doing research. We could not have done it without active partners at the University of Utah, active partners at Intermountain Healthcare, um, our key partners from the National Center for the Advancement of Clinical and Translational Science, or NCATS. They have something called a Trial Innovation Network, which they started, gosh, probably 4-ish years ago now. And when we came to them with this trial, they immediately stood up a group to help us coordinate the data, develop the protocol, bring the statisticians together to make sure that what we were doing was being done in a way that we could actually answer the questions we were asking, and bring patient stakeholders in to help make sure that we were explaining things well and doing them in a way that would be safe and acceptable to our patient participants. Their help was just insanely important, and without them, I don't know that we could have done it.
I love that. Isn't it incredible how Utahns and Utah has really come together during this time and just spun things up that normally takes way longer?
I Our partners in Utah have been amazing. We've had cooperation and collaboration from the Department of Health, from the state government, obviously from the university, obviously from Intermountain. Um, People just finding us things out of back closets, I think, sometimes, to make sure that all of our study nurses had appropriate personal protective equipment so that they could do this safely, and really making sure that this is not a fast trial, because sometimes fast means cutting corners, but this is probably one of the best run trials I've ever been a part of. I'm really, really proud.
So Dr. Hess, one of the drugs in this trial, hydroxychloroquine, which I mentioned, it's
Yeah,
usually used for treating malaria.
yeah.
Do you think it might work for COVID-19?
That's why we're doing the study. We don't know. In some of our animal models, and instead of some of our cell models, we see that it seems to decrease viral replication, which may decrease the transmissibility and may keep people out of the hospital. We're looking at if it decreases the amount of time that people are shedding the virus, or how long they're contagious with the virus, and whether or not it helps prevent transmission from a person who's living in a house with COVID-19 to another person living in that house who may not have COVID-19 yet. So trying to think about how that happens. But we're not sure. This drug has gotten a lot of press. There are a lot of people doing a lot of stuff with it. Um, and we thought that it was really important to do a well-designed clinical trial to answer the question, is this drug the one we should be banking on? Or can we kind of move on and start asking questions about other medications? And we think that that's one of the most important things, is making sure that we can answer that yes no question as quickly as possible, so that we can either turn our attention to other things or get this out faster.
Are there any downsides to running this trial, or any downsides to using hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19?
Um, Hydroxychloroquine is a relatively safe medication. Like you mentioned, it's been used in malaria for a very, very long time. It's used for a lot of our patients who have lupus, which is an inflammatory autoimmune disease. But it has side effects. And some of those side effects are pretty mild and annoying, like nausea or diarrhea. Others of those side effects can be pretty dangerous, like something called a prolongation of your QT interval, which in English means changing the way that your heart's conduction pattern happens. And so the way that we're dealing with that is, one, we're using a dose that's low to be safe, but high enough to hopefully be effective if it's going to work. And the second is that we're making sure that any participant who signs up for this study doesn't have any known heart conduction problems, any problems with the circuitry of their heart, or taking any other medication that can do the same thing, because in combination, those medications can be more dangerous than either of them are alone.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Have you seen there's another drug by Gideon or have you seen
Gilead, yeah.
Gilead? Yeah. Is this part of this trial at all? Because that seemed to be getting some good, at least over the past 24, 48 hours, a lot of publicity that might be helping.
It's getting huge plugs. I always have trouble with the names that pharmaceutical companies give to their medications, which I think are made to be hard to pronounce. So you don't use the generic name and you always use the brand name. But if I'm going to say it right, it's remdesivir. And one of the things that's interesting about remdesivir is that it's an intravenous drug, so it gets infused into your blood vessels. We're using it right now in trials on the inpatient setting, so people who are hospitalized. And that initial report out of Chicago was super exciting, but an uncontrolled study. So they're giving remdesivir to a sequence of patients and then describing what happens to them. But in an uncontrolled study, we don't know whether or not they got lucky and happened to find the people who were just going to do well, or whether it's the medication helping them. And so there are a bunch of trials going on with remdesivir around the country right now, two large ones, one sponsored by the National Institutes of Health and one sponsored by Gilead, the company that makes the medication, to look at that in a randomized fashion as well. And I think that we're all kind of holding our breath and crossing our fingers that for our patients and for our populations who are sick enough to end up in the hospital, remdesivir is going to be that drug that saves them.
Wouldn't that be incredible? How would that change everything if we found out the hydroxychloroquine or remdesivir, I probably said both of them wrong, if we found out that those drugs could help treat and prevent the spread of COVID-19? Because absent a vaccine, we're in this
Yeah,
thing, and these
we
aren't
are.
vaccines. These are treatments. These are not
These are
vaccines.
treatments.
But
And
how does that change everything?
I think that that changes a lot, because right now, part of COVID is that it's terrifying. Treatment, and the people who seem to be getting sick are sometimes the people that we expect to get sick, like with the flu and end up in the hospital, people who are older, people who have a lot of other medical conditions. And those people are definitely getting sick with COVID-19. But we're also seeing young, healthy, normal people that are your next door neighbor who do not have any medical problems getting sick with COVID-19 and dying. And so if we had a treatment, if we had something that we knew, hey, if you get sick, this will help keep you out of the hospital. Or if you get into the hospital, this will keep you out of the ICU. Or if you get into the ICU, this will keep you from dying. I think that would give us a lot more freedom to reopen our country and feel safe about it and feel like, yeah, we're going to have people get sick just like we do every year with the flu, but we have a treatment, we have a way to get through this. But right now, we don't. And in some ways, it feels very random and very scary.
Right. On hydroxychloroquine, the FDA is allowing emergency use of the drug for treating COVID-19.
Yes.
Why do we need to test it in a clinical trial?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it goes back, Clint, to what you had asked me earlier about the side effects. Every medication that we use, whether it's hydroxychloroquine for COVID or Claritin for your allergies, has side effects. And we take those side effects and we take those risks because the medication hopefully is going to help us. And just like I wouldn't tell somebody to take Claritin if they had a runny nose, but it wasn't allergies, because it's not going to help and it could do something to hurt them. I wouldn't ask somebody to take hydroxychloroquine if I didn't know that it was going to help their condition. And so by doing the studies, we can really understand whether or not this medication is going to help or it's not going to help. And if it's not going to help, then the side effects that I'm putting you at risk for aren't worth it, because any side effect that you get from something that's not going to help you is just a side effect. So we really hope to understand whether or not hydroxychloroquine or any of the medications that we're testing right now in COVID-19 are going to help. And if they're going to help, how much? And that can give us some comfort to know, if this is where you are in the disease, we use this medication. If this is how you're behaving in the disease, we use a different one, and help us tailor the therapy to make sure that we're adequately treating the people in front of us, just like we do with every other medication that we use to treat everything from your allergies to your high blood pressure to anything else. And that's, it's hard, right? Because we're like, oh, it might work. And then when something might work, we're sort of like, should I just try it? And that's really tempting, but using it in clinical trials gives us the opportunity to understand how it works and who it works and if it works, and means that if it doesn't, we can move on to providing a medication, hopefully, that does.
Right. How large is the clinical trial?
So we're conducting 2 clinical trials right now in Utah in the outpatient setting. The one that we're talking about today is a 400-person study of hydroxychloroquine versus placebo. Our primary outcome is duration of viral shedding. And so we're looking for 400 Utahns who have COVID-19, who have tested positive within the last 48 hours, preferably 24, so that we can get you enrolled. And then asking those people to collect oropharyngeal swabs, so kind of swab their throat like they're getting a test for strep throat, every day for 14 days. They're adult household contacts who are willing to. That's not a requirement, but we'd like them to if they can. We're going to draw blood 3 times during the study to look at how antibodies form and different ways that some people may have some protective mechanisms with COVID-19. So that's the first study, 400 people, a lot of biospecimens. And then at Intermountain, they're running a parallel study of 1,500 people looking at hydroxychloroquine versus azithromycin, which is an antibiotic that we use commonly in bronchitis and pneumonia. That study is only enrolling people over the age of 44 because their primary outcome is hospitalization. And as you know, older adults, 45 and over, are at higher risk of getting hospitalized. So we're starting with people at the age of 18 and they're starting at 44.
If someone watching this, and as we promote this thing out there, does have COVID-19, would like to be part of the clinical trial, is there a way for them to get in touch with you and the team running this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 things right now. The first is, and I'm just going to quickly scroll to it because I've managed to not memorize it as I'm talking to you.
No, you're great. By the way, I love your backyard here.
Oh, thank you. You're actually looking at my neighbor's backyard because they're much better gardeners than we are. And my husband told me that this was the right sun direction. Not sure about that. So
I think it is. It's a good sun direction. I'll tell you, I think you may have been right.
Okay. Anyone can go to the website RPA. R is in rhinoceros, P is in Paul, A is in aardvark.utah.edu. And there's a place to sign up there to volunteer for a myriad of studies that are observational and our trial, et cetera. The other is, if you want to reach out to us directly, the email is covidstudy@hsc, that's Health Sciences Center.utah.edu.
Okay, perfect. We'll push that out as well. Both of those contacts. When do you expect to have answers on this trial?
How soon we have answers depends on how soon people sign up. So we started enrolling people for this trial on Wednesday. We've got, I think I heard as of today, 6 people enrolled. Our goal is to enroll 10 people every day. So we're just getting started. So for us, actually, the 6 was really good to make sure that all the systems were working properly and everything like that. But starting Monday, we hope to have 10 people who are volunteering for the study every day. We're calling people who have been tested within the University of Utah system to reach out directly to them And then anyone else in the community, anywhere in Utah, if they email us, if they reach out to us, we're getting contact information out to people's physicians in the community very shortly to start bringing in community enrollment next week. But if we can find 10 people a day, the study will take us about another 8 weeks to finish, and then 10 to 12 weeks to really have the results. So we're looking at hopefully having results in early July.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah, so
great.
May, June, is that right? Yeah, May, June, early July, and mid-July. We're now in mid-April. And if we enroll slower, the results will come back slower. So the most important thing is if you feel like this is something that you can do to participate in, we would love to have you, and it'll help get us those answers faster. I also just want to plug that we're in conversations with people doing this research nationally, and the fact that Utah was able to bring forward these two outpatient studies is being looked at around the country, and we're being asked for our protocol, being asked to participate. We've got people at the universities in California talking with us about how they can work on this in parallel and how did we figure it out and how did we get it going so quickly. And the answer we keep giving them is, this is Utah, we solve problems in Utah. Um, but but sometimes I think sometimes people look at us from the outside and don't realize the power that Utah has. And in the COVID response, we've really been getting a lot of people looking at us from the outside and seeing that power. And it makes me really proud to be a Utahn right now and in
I
general.
love that. I love that. So if you want to participate in the clinical study, it's rpa.utah.edu or
Yep,
email covidstudy@hsc.utah.edu.
correct.
Dr. Hess, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so impressed and so proud to have the University of Utah and University of Utah Health in this state. The work that you do is unbelievable all the time, but in particular in the middle of this pandemic, it's inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clint, for having us, and thank you to Silicon Slopes for doing all this work to help increase testing and treatment in Utah.
Thank you. We'll have you on again as this thing progresses. Appreciate
Would
it.
love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks.